I'm so happy you were able to spend the time on focusing on your personal financial budget to ensure that you're well looked after. So, as we reach out into the mortgage business and our clients, we're able to give them advice with confidence because, there's a guy we probably all know, his name's Dr. Phil. What he says is you must take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. So, I'm glad we got that out of the way. And now we can get to the fun stuff of starting to set some targets. When you're setting goals, I'd like you to set your goals in two different categories. I'd like you to look at your personal goals as well as your professional goals. Your personal goals are going to be things like I want to make sure I take 3 weeks holidays with my family. I want to make sure that I set aside that time for date night with my spouse. I want to make sure that I save up for that boat that I've got. I want to make sure that I spend time with my kids. I want to make sure that I go to the gym 3 times a week. Whatever those goals are, I want you to make sure you write those goals down because those are extremely important because I'm going to tell you those goals will become before any of the other goals that you have. At least they should. Now, if those goals are too much, it might not leave enough room in our schedule to be able to get anything done. So let's also be realistic as we're setting those goals. We're going to go through SMART goals in a minute after this. The second thing that I want you to do is to look at your specific goals that pertain to the business, this business. So we're going to look at the goals of how many units you're going to do. In other words, how many mortgages? What is your income expectation out of this business? What are your hours that you're going to work in this business? How many applications you're going to get in this business? How many leads you're going to get into those applications? How many people do you need to know in order to make this business successful? We've got a great spreadsheet. We're going to break that all out in a moment. But before we do that, what I really want to do is start talking about, as we look at these goals, how important they are and how we have to reflect on it. If you remember, Eric Thomas had that beautiful video about setting goals. He calls them oxygen goals. If you want to succeed as much as you want to breathe, then you will be successful. So when we set these goals, these can't be, I kind of want it. These means I'm going to get it. There's no excuses. As soon as the goal is set, it is set. Once you set your goals, I want you to go look yourself in the mirror and say, I am not going to reduce my goals. Only thing I'm going to do is increase my actions or change my actions to ensure that I do hit my goals. Because remember, standards are everything. Standards are the thing that are going to set our trajectory. If we accept anything less than what our standard is of ourselves, well, guess what? That's our new standard. So let's ensure that we set those standards for ourselves with our action plan to make sure that we hit our goals. A great overall strategy to apply to setting goals is looking at a very common system called SMART goals. SMART goals is an acronym where each letter stands for a different way that we can look at our goals to ensure that we are going to be able to put down things of meaning. So the S, when we look at the S, it stands for specific. We want to make sure that the goals are something that is very well defined, something that we can attribute to and say, yes, we know exactly what that is. So for example, we might say, I would like to make $100,000 this year. I'd like $1 million this year. It's very specific as to the income goal that I'm looking at doing. The other thing when we look at it is we say it's measurable. In other words, there's a specific criteria that we're going to use to say we are on track to hitting our goals. And then the next thing we want to look at is achievable. In other words, has anybody ever done this before? Maybe not just me, but has anybody ever achieved this kind of success? Now, that's not to say that just because somebody else hasn't done it, we can't do it, but we want to make sure that we take that into consideration when we look at the complexity of trying to achieve that goal. When we say realistic, we want to say that when we're looking at that goal, that it will fit within the boundaries of what we can and can't do. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a lot of personal things that you're trying to achieve so much that it doesn't leave a lot of room to work in your business, it might not be a realistic goal. And then the last one we're looking at is timely. In other words, there has to be a time frame applied to your goal. Is it within the next month? Is it within the next year? Is it in the next quarter? Or heck, is it even for today? What is that goal? Now, as we set our goals, the one thing we need to consider is that when we look at our goals, let's face it, numbers are one of the most important things to look at when we're looking at our targets. We need to look at our revenue goals. Now, a lot of people love talking about revenue, but they hate that P word. It's a very funny thing. And I can tell you, we'll run into this later in a later conversation where we're going to test this theory. The P word that I'm going to talk about is the word profit. We need to generate a profit. Because again, if you don't have a profit, your time on the shelf is very limited. You will expire unless you have endless surplus of money you'd love to dump at this hobby you call the mortgage business. Because let's face it, it's a hobby until you're making income. Now let's look at that income and we say, okay, we're going to break that out. We're going to look at our targets. We're going to say there's our top line income, which is our commissions that are coming in. And then there's our bottom line income, which is after everything else that comes out, broker fees, any splits that you might pay, any office fees you might pay, whatever the fees are that are out there. And then we look at things like your advertising expenses. We look at things like your car or anything else that you can apply. What is that profit going to be at the end? Because at the end of the day, without profit, it's just a very expensive hobby. So let's break this down.